Alright, today we are going to finally get to the oil catch can project. The oil catch can is going to sit right about here, and we have a mounting bracket that should be bolted to this existing hole right behind the headlight. The first thing we're going to do is take off the intake, and because we're going to have to run hoses, I don't know, either in front or behind the inverter. We're going to see what works best to the PCV valve right under the intake manifold, so we got to get to that. And so first things first, start taking all this apart. We do have a video that refers to this process, which you can refer to. I guess it depends on how much detail we show right now. This one, no tools, just pops off 3 grommets, and that way we can get to this bolt for the airbox. And yeah, that's about it. Take off this. I think we're going to loosen this one. Take off this one. Then we're going to take out this. Unclip this. Take out the air filter. There we go. Alright. Unbolt this sucker. And the little gasket has clips on it so it doesn't fall. Like yesterday I was Googling something, and I don't even remember what, but probably some car stuff. And what all I typed was "is," and dude, you know what came up was "is Megan pregnant?" It's the new princess. She's freaking, because I heard she's getting old. She's like 37. Damn, she's old as me. Time for her to have a kid. There we go. There's one. There we go. There we go. La la la. Oh, there we go. Finally. Okay. Then we got all the injectors hooked up. There we go. Wow. Alright, so now we got the intake pulled back. Now that all the wiring's out of the way. And I hope you can see there. But so now we have access to our PCV valve and hose here that we're going to hook up to. So the PCV is, well, I mean, this is metric stuff, so the sizes we're using aren't exact, but it's basically what's available. So we're going to use a 3/8 for the PCV side, which is going into the can, and then coming out of the can and back into the intake, we're going to use a 5/8, which I believe would be the closest fit for that one. So we are going to disconnect this PCV hose. The little clamps are actually pretty easy to remove with your fingers, and it slides off there. The other one might be easier to reach it from the other side. It's kind of a tight little space here. But this one also is finger tight. The clamp. Alright, there we go. Now we gotta get it off the manifold. Oh, there we go. So you can see that end is way bigger. Yeah, kind of a weird setup. It's definitely a special hose right there. Here we go. We have all of our, well, it should be all of our oil catch can parts. Here's the can itself with the two different size fittings. There's an inlet side and outside. The out would be actually the in to the intake manifold, and the in here would be coming out of the PCV valve. So just make sure you don't get confused on that. You'll see it in detail when we get into the video here. So here's our bracket that is going to hold the catch can, and you'll see where that mounts up. And let's see, so then we have our hoses. This is a 3/8 hose that's gonna hook to the smaller fitting. We got the appropriate size clamps. Then we have our, this one is a 1/2 inch hose that is going to this fitting, which is gonna be a little tight, but it's doable. It's a little tricky because I think technically these are metric size and this is inch size. And then we also have, so, well, let's see, then I need to talk about this original hose. This goes from the PCV and then wraps around, goes to the intake. The intake size, or side, is a much bigger size, as you can see. We found that this one is closest to a 3/4. So what we did, so we went to the hardware store, and yeah, I know I'm not a plumber, but this is out of the plumbing section. But it says 1/2 inch inner diameter to, yeah, 1/2 inch something else. But it looks like this, and it's basically the outside diameter or inner diameter of the hose you're using is going to be about 1/2 inch, and then this threaded side is actually pretty close to 3/4 inch. So we got a 3/4 inch hose, and we're going to put that like so, clamp it down, and then we're going to put it like that. So that way we can reduce from this big fitting on the intake manifold to a smaller size that will go to our oil catch can. So if that makes sense, well, it might make more sense when we actually show how we do it. This bracket was from Daniel on the Prius chat. It's a pretty cool little piece. It's 3D printed, and yeah, it's like a nice simple bracket. Seems really appropriate for the application. It's not too complicated, it doesn't take up a lot of space, so it should work out well. I will at this point start by mentioning a couple of other things. We disconnected this switching valve here from the side of the manifold so that we can tilt it sideways and get more room to work. Also unplug this sensor here, just so we have more access to the fitting, the inlet that dumps the air into the manifold, and yeah, I think that's about it. The coolant lines, we didn't want to make a mess, so we just left those, and we got plenty of room to work now. So the next thing I'm going to do is put the fitting. So we got our appropriate size clamps. What are these? These are, they say 12 to 32 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and put the fitting into the hose. This is that 3/4 inch hose. Alright, so I put the fitting into the 3/4 inch hose. If it's giving you a little trouble, it is threaded, so you can kind of twist it and push at the same time, and it'll should go down in there. And then so the clamps, I have them facing in this position because I want to be able to access them with the manifold mounted on. I don't want to, if we flip them the other way, then you would have to remove the manifold just to undo these clamps and take off this hose, which would be a pain and too much work in the future if you needed to take it off. So I'm going to go ahead and slide it in, but let's see. What you got to watch out for is this coolant hose right here is possibly going to interfere, so you got to just kind of work around it. And so basically, if you can see that, see right there, now the way that these nuts or bolts are pointing out, you can access them from the top here. So I'm just gonna kind of set it into position so you can see how that works. All right, so now if we just hold that coolant pipe back, or hose, see now you can see that these clamps are in a nice little spot where they are accessible from the top here without removing the manifold. So we're gonna tighten those down. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that should be good right there. All right, then the next fun part we have is, let's try to keep this out of the way for the moment. So then we got to fit our hose, the 1/2-inch hose, and then we're going to run it behind the inverter. It's where we can hook it up over here to the oil catch can. All right, so yeah, that's all nice and firmly mounted there. That looks pretty good. And let's see, so then we need our other hose. All right, so this is going to run up through here. I think it's going to be something like this. Bam! Oh, then it's going to have to go down here. Might have to test this and retest. Yeah, I want to get this back in. All right. Okay. All right, so we'll bolt the switching valve back down. And make sure that the little clip is in its slot to hold it in the right position. Okay, that's fine right there. All right, so you can see our fitting here. It actually kind of wants to run right into this switching valve, but we can just bend it because it is flexible hose, and because the piece of hose coming off here is going to be smaller, so that gives us a little more room to work with. And so let's just go ahead and hook it up. There we go. Boom. So then we got our clamp. In this case, you know what? I'm not sure which way we want to run the clamp. I think I'll face it the same way. Oops, I'm going to have to take it off the other side. So once you get the 1/2-inch hose onto this side of the fitting, it actually sticks on there really tight, because this is like a, I guess what you call a barb style fitting, so it really catches and sticks. So that's why I'm taking the clamp off the other end. Okay. So I got the other clamp facing, so I want to tighten it from the top or the outside, depending on how you look at it. And then gotta run this hose behind the inverter. All right, so let's see one more time. See if we can get this back into position. Mount up the manifold, tighten our clamp. There we go. So yeah, now I can see it right there. So yeah, it is a tight fit in here, but it actually works. So the trick here, you know, maybe we should, I want to point out something. The trick here is the length. What we made this little short 3/4 inch hose, what about 2 1/4? Yeah, somewhere around 2 1/4 inch length. That way, as you can see, this is all a really tight fit. The coolant line coming off the throttle body is actually like right in between these clamps. All right, so now we got our clamp tightened onto the 1/2-inch hose, 2 clamps tightened on the 3/4 ends, and now we are just going to, well, we need to be careful and put our EGR gasket back in, because even though it has these clips on it, it still fell off, got knocked off. But yeah, so we're gonna tighten down the manifold. The piece of hose that's coming off of the plumbing fitting, whatever you call that, that piece is like right about 2 feet. We have just enough, we got lucky, to reach to our oil catch can by going behind the inverter. So yeah, to be on the safe side, you might want to get a little more than 2 feet. So we're going to go in now and put our PCV valve hose section in, which I'm afraid, I hope it's long enough. Alright, so we found that the 2-foot hose was not enough, at least for the PCV side. So I would say, to be on the safe side, get about 3 feet of both sizes of hose. So we're going to go ahead and just use our longer hose that actually came with the OTC kit. And we're going to clamp that down. Alright, so we got a nice tight fit. And let's try this again. We'll run the hose back through. And you know, at the end, if you got a little extra, of course you can always trim it from the oil can side. There we go. We have plenty. Alright, so we got our hoses routed, and now we can actually put the manifold back in its place. And carefully put the EGR gasket. So let's get it back into position here. And as I think I mentioned, double check your intake manifold gasket. Make sure it hasn't fallen out of place or gotten pinched or something. Alright, so yeah, there we go. Got our EGR in place, EGR pipe. And we can start fastening this thing back down. Okay, and then don't forget the clip that supports the oil dipstick tube is this one on the end here, of course. So I'm just hand tightening to make sure everything lines up. I don't want anything to be out of whack when we go to start the car later. So I want to make sure that this EGR pipe looks good, and then I can get the bolts in. So I started from the middle and worked outward. I think it's a pretty good general rule. And we're going to put all the wiring back. Be careful to position everything back where it came from. Make sure you don't miss any connectors. So, alright. Oh, well, let's, there we go. And then there's the bolt that I took out just to be safe. I think it helps a little bit, just helps you move that harness out of the way. I don't want to yank on any wires. Okay. And then it clips in there. Oh, don't forget about your fuel injector connectors. There we go. All 4 of them. Oh, now it goes the airbox. Oh, there's one more little support clip down there. And another connector I pulled out. Okay, and don't forget the throttle motor. That's important. Yeah, now we can put the airbox back. Then we'll get to the main attraction, the OCC. Yeah, check that out. It actually has a feature where it locks it open. Actually made that work. It's amazing. Here we go. And you gotta get into position. Like that. Yeah! Put this one back. So when we put this back in, there is this hose here that clamps into these 3 clips. So you gotta kind of get it around that hose. There. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then you gotta find the spot down below There's a bracket down there that the bottom part of the box bolts to. Might be easier to start the top one. All these bolts are the same bolt, so you don't have to worry about mixing up the airbox bolts. Oh, they're all 10mm socket to tighten them to, because it can be a little hard to see where it's supposed to go. So then there's that hose that we were working around. Push it down into the clips that support it. And then we got our air filter and lid. Drop in the filter. Then don't forget about your connector back there. So you can, there we go. The lid hinges in. Can clamp that down. Work the hose into position, stick the connector on, and we'll tighten this little guy. Alright, then we just have our finishing piece, our cover. There we go. Don't forget to push it down in the back. There we are. So, time to put in the OCC. The only kind of tricky part to this is just getting the bracket mounted up. I'm using the supplied nut and bolt. I think it's going to be easier to put the bolt in from below. Oh, and you'll notice too there's a bump, there's like a step, I guess, in the bracket. So that is going to hold it in place right there. It actually positions it perfectly, so it's not hitting this bracket or this fuse box. So we just got to get the lock washer on there. Sorry if my head's in the way. And then we're going to get the nuts started, because it's pretty tight fit here, but it's doable. There we go. Takes a little kind of finessing it into position there. Alright, so now we just got to get a wrench in there. I'm guessing that's like 13mm though. Alright, so I'm using a 13mm wrench to tighten the bracket down. I don't want to go too crazy tight. We are tightening onto plastic, so. Okay, so I just kind of held the bolt in place underneath with my fingers. Tighten the top nut with the wrench. It does have a lock nut, so it doesn't have to be super tight. Should be just fine. Alright, so then we got our catch can here. And we just gotta hook it up. Alright, so gonna hook up the larger hose. Oops, don't have that tightened in yet. Alright, so we'll tighten our fittings down. Alright, so the fittings here are about 19mm, it looks like. Yeah, so we're gonna snug those down, 19mm socket. Then we're gonna put this into position. Got our clamp on here. Alright. And I cut the two hoses to length. Here, I'll just make them face the same way so they look nice. Alright, so let's get this one on. It is a little bit of a tight fit, but it'll work. Actually, if you're having trouble, WD-40 is a big help. So we can spray a little WD-40, slide them on. There we go. Alright, slide the other one. Oh, watch out, because your clamp's going to want to go back down in there. Loosen it up a little. Get it into position. Alright, so snug this down. Okay, so I think, whoa, that's tight. Oh man. Ooh, there we go. All right, so yeah, this is a pretty snug fit, just like on the other end. So we're gonna shove that one on. Try to keep track of this clamp here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to get the clamp into position and tighten that one down. Alright, I think we are done. There it is. Wool catch can.